here it is. I hope you enjoyed making it as well. Now, when you've washed your fabric and cut out your pattern, you're ready to cut the dress. This dress is cut on bias, so the drape running is diagonal, and since I have stripes, I just followed the stripe. But if you don't have stripes and just a plain fabric, you can just look more closely and you see the drape running, so you can match up the pattern correctly. So just check for the arrow and the drape running with the fabric. And then, just as always, pin it down generously. And here as well, there is 1 centimeter seam allowance already in there. This piece I'm not cutting on fold, so I only have 1 layer of fabric, because I only need this part once and I have it open, so it's a bit easier to match up on the fabric and not on fold, especially with bias cuts. It is sometimes hard to fold the fabric really straight. If you are cutting with a roller blade, that's really nice because you don't have to lift the fabric and the pattern won't move as much. But if you are cutting with scissors, you just pin a little bit more so the fabric doesn't move. Now, same thing with the back. Now you should have the piece for the string, bias tape, the piece for the lining, the back piece and the front piece. Now you can lay your front piece flat with the nice side facing upwards. For me, both sides are quite the same, so it doesn't really matter. And then placing the lining onto the top piece, and now don't pull too much because this is on bias, otherwise it will stretch. But now I'm just pinning this part together. Putting it aside, and I'm also taking the back piece. Again, here the nice side is facing upward, and I'm taking my bias tape and I'll start here and pin it all around. I have the fabric for the strap and I am ironing it in half, just like this. I have the front piece where I've just pinned on the lining and I'm sewing it on with 1 centimeter seam allowance and stitch length 2.5. At the start and at the end I'm always doing a few back and forth stitches. I'm also sewing on the bias tape, and here I'm going foot wide, again with stitch length 2.5, and I'm just following the edge with my foot, which is about 7 mm. 1 . If you're sewing above the pins, just please go slow, otherwise you might break your sewing machine needle, which is really annoying. You can also just pull them out just before you go above. And you can also sew your strap. I'm cutting back the seam allowance of the strap a little bit. So here is my stitch, and I just keeping this much. When I've cut back the seam allowance of the strap, I'm choosing a zigzag stitch and I'm just going above the edge to give it a bit more security. To turn the strap, I'm using a safety pin, and I've just put it on the corner here, and I'm always checking that I use enough. This strap is going to be a bit wider, so I have a lot of room to push it through, and I'm just pushing until I'm coming out the other end. And here I have the strap. Now I can just iron it quickly to get it flat and nice. I am using my serger to finish up the top edge, and if you don't have a serger, you can just do a zigzag stitch. This is not going to show anyways, but I want to keep the pieces nice also when I'm washing them. For the next step, I am opening up the lining at the top of the main piece, and I'm just ironing it upwards like this. And the next step is following the edge on the side of the lining with the seam allowance also facing towards the lining, and I'm just following the edge to have it nice and flat so you can't see the stitch from the front when I'm going to fold it down later. I have ironed the seam allowance towards the lining in the front piece at the top, and I'm following the edge and sewing it down on the side of the lining. This I'm doing with a slightly longer stitch, about 3.5 to 4. And it looks like this. I can also iron the back piece, and for that I can just iron the bias tape upwards all around. Then I'm folding it in and folding it down, so from the outside it looks like this. And I can also pin it all around. Now I have the back like this, and super nice from the front, just like that. And now I can sew it down here as well. With the back piece, I can also sew down the bias tape now. And this looks like this now. I'm overlocking the bottom of the lining. Again, if you don't have an overlocker, do a zigzag stitch and then fold it up and do a stitch from the front so you won't see. I folded the front piece open with the nice side facing upwards, and I'm putting the back piece on top of the front piece with the nice side of the back piece facing the nice side of the front piece, and I'm pinning both sides together starting from the bottom seam. For the version with the crossback, I've cut 2 times 8 centimeter of the strap, and I'm just folding it like this, and then I'll just place it here in the corner where I am ending with the back piece. So the back piece ends out here, and this one is in here, and then I'll add the lining on top of this. But now I'm just pinning, and this I'm doing on both sides. Then I'm folding down the lining of the front piece, and I'm also pinning down this part. Here I'm just checking that it lies flat at the edge, like this. And then here I carefully place it on top of each other, like this. Just pinning it flat. I'm measuring down from the top seam. I'm putting in this pin as a marker, and then I'm measuring 1 centimeter, putting in another pin, and this part I'm going to leave open for the drawstring. But then I can sew the side seam with 1 centimeter seam allowance. I have finished the side seam, and if you've done so too, you can overlock or zigzag the edge. And this I'm doing from the back. And I am also just starting here, so I have the opening open. The ends of the overlock I'm usually leaving long, or I'm making a knot here, and then I can cut it back already, because this is going to be inside and it's not gonna be any border. At the bottom I'm leaving it long for now. Then I'm also doing the other side as well from the back. Now I can iron the whole piece, and I'm ironing the side seam towards the front. Here it's a little bit, might be a little bit tricky at the top, but that's fine. We can iron the top part and from the outside again, this side as well, just ironing to the front. The top part I'm ironing to the front as well, and this here is a little bit tricky. Doesn't need to be perfect yet, because I'm doing it from the other side again. Now I'm ready to turn it inside out, just like this, and of course I'm ironing again from this side. Now for the top part, I'm pulling the fabric apart. I'm wiggling the edge out. Then I can iron here at the top. I'm also massaging the edge out and ironing it carefully, like this. Using again a little bit of a longer stitch length, 3.5 to 4, and I have the opening here, so I'm going to sew along the edge here to create a tunnel, and I'm paying attention that this part is super flat. With 1 centimeter distance from the top stitch, I'm making another stitch below, and I'm creating a 1 centimeter wide tunnel. Now I can take my strap and put on a safety pin and push it through the tunnel at the top. To finish off the edge of the strap, I can now either push it in and sew along the edge here, which is a little bit tricky, or I can choose a super short and super thin zigzag stitch and just go over the edge. So I'm doing stitch width 1.5 and stitch length like 1. And of course the same thing on the other side. You can try your dress on and decide on the length, and then you can overlock the bottom seam. Just make sure the seam allowance lies into the right direction, and then you can sew it up. When I'm going all around, I'm just going to sew right above the first few stitches, and I'm going out about here like this, so it's all around nicely finished. Finishing the bottom seam, and I'm sewing it on with a little bit of a longer stitch, about 3.5 to 4.